when a lot of us think about the unknown, there's a lot of fear attached to it, right? Because it's like, oh, I know the challenges I'm facing now, but like, what about the challenges in the unknown? He actually says that the unknown is the only place where the possibility for a better life exists. So I think instead of focusing on the fear of the challenges that are waiting for you and the unknown, try to think about the joy and the possibilities of learning, of experiencing new things, of experiencing new possibilities that can be in the unknown as well.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Nourished Inside Out. I am here with Amber today. She's a self-improvement podcast host focusing on resilience. Thank you so much for joining us today, Amber.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Do you mind telling us a little bit about your journey on how you became a podcast host?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a really big part of the topic itself on resilience. I went through so many things in my 20s and in my 30s, mental health challenges, breakups, burnout, quarter life crisis, and then I moved to 2 different countries. And in all of those, it all came with a lot of setbacks, a lot of challenges. And throughout all of it, there was just this impulse to keep going and to keep fighting for what I wanted. Ultimately, I had a lot of people throughout life tell me, oh, you'd be really good at this, or you should start creating content around self-improvement. I tried recording a TikTok. So I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm finally going to do it. So I started a TikTok, and then I was like, wait, I have too much to say. I can't just make a small TikTok. I need a whole podcast.
Wow, that's incredible. So, going back before you started this podcast, you said you moved to 2 different countries. Can you tell us on how that journey was and how the experience was for you?
This story kind of starts when I'm around 25. So I had always wanted to go traveling, but I came from a family of working class immigrants, so we really couldn't afford travel. When I finally finished my master's degree, I'd like saved up money for a really long time. And then I went to Spain. For some reason, it got like really stuck in my mind. I was like, I need to go to Spain. I went, it was my first trip abroad, and I went by myself because nobody else was available to come with me. I fell in love, and I was like, wow, I can really see myself here. I think I want to come back. And I got really stuck on like the idea of moving to Spain. Over the next year of my life, everything just started going wrong. My relationship, my health, my job, my friends, my financial situation, everything one by one just fell apart. It got to a point where I would like come home every day and I would just cry. And I felt like I was in a full blown quarter life crisis until one day one of my coworkers was like, Amber, you just seem so unhappy. And she was like, you're always talking about Spain. Why don't you go teach English in Spain or something? And I was like, Stephanie, I'm the child of immigrants. I can't go do something reckless like that. I was like, are you kidding me? I have a stable job. This is my parents' wildest dreams. And she told me, I was 25 at the time and she was 36. And she was like, why not? You're young. You don't have a husband. You don't have kids. You're at the beginning of your career. This is the perfect time to do something totally selfish with no regard for the consequences. And I remember her saying, life will just get more complicated later. She was like, do it now. And I was like, okay. So I go home and I look up the program. There's several, but I see the page for CIEE, Teach English in Spain, and I look at it and I was like, oh, I can't do this. And I closed the page because I was like, oh, this is too crazy. I can't do it. Child of immigrants. And I open up my Facebook and the very first status I see was, has anyone been to Andalusia in Spain? And I was like, yeah, why do you ask? And my friend says, I just got accepted to teach English in Spain through CIEE's program. And I was like, this is a sign.
Oh my goodness.
This is a sign. So all of a sudden, I went from like within 24 hours, I was like, there's no way I could ever go teach English in Spain to application submitted. I was waiting for a response, and I ended up getting accepted. And I got sent to the same city as as my friend, and so we ended up moving together. Yeah.
Isn't it so beautiful how things work out that way? Kind of going back to you being the child of an immigrant family who went to the States, I can relate with some of those aspects because my family went from Poland to America. And same thing, I think they try to put this dream on us on like what we should be doing, and not just like immigrant families. It's just a lot of families and parents put it onto their kids like you should go to college and get a good education, get a good job, and marry. But that's not everybody's dream these days. I'm really proud of you for taking that leap of faith and taking that. Everything you were doing after you had that conversation was leading you to Spain. Did you know Spanish at all, or was it something that you were learning when you got there?
My parents are from Latin America. They're from the Dominican Republic, so I grew up speaking Spanish my whole life. Yeah.
Is the Spanish different in Spain than it's Dominican?
Yeah, very different. I remember one time I was walking through this department store. It was, for an American, it's kind of like a Macy's. And there was like floors upon floors upon floors. And I was looking for the bathroom until I finally asked the woman, "Where's the bathroom?" And she was like, "Oh, los aseos." And it was like a completely different word. But the funny part is, I had passed the signs that said los aseos on every floor.
What was the hardest part about leaving behind the familiar, whether it was friends, family, or your sense of home? What was the hardest part about that journey?
That's such an interesting question because I was in a crisis mode. I was so excited to leave everything behind. I remember I started selling all of my stuff because I was like, oh, I'm going to go to Spain. I need money to travel. I sold everything. Whatever I couldn't sell, I dropped it off at Goodwill or like a Boys and Girls Club. Like, I never got rid of my stuff so fast. People would come to buy my stuff and they'd be like, this is a perfectly good couch. Why are you selling it? I'm moving to Spain.
Wow.
I was really excited. When I moved there, it was just so liberating. I felt like I was really getting to know a different side of who I was because I was moving abroad to a new country, having to manage all of these things by myself, and immigration and bureaucracy in a whole nother language. Even if I grew up speaking Spanish, I certainly didn't grow up doing immigration processes in Spanish. So there was a lot of new things and new challenges that I had to face by myself, and it really developed my confidence. So there wasn't a lot that I missed about the US, but I think over time I did start to miss the diversity of the US. If you live in any major American city, you just meet so many different types of people who have so many different stories. Something I've noticed about some European cities outside of the major cities is it tends to be the people from that country, right? So if you're in a smaller city in Italy, it's mostly Italians. If you're in a smaller city in Spain, it's mostly Spanish people. I wasn't in Madrid or Barcelona. I was in a smaller city. And so it was mostly Spanish people. And I really missed that diversity of the US because I think it lends itself to like this openness and this open-mindedness.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful perspective. I really love that. Well, one, I want to go back to when you were moving. If it was a no-brainer for you, that's how you know you should be making that decision. I felt that same way when I was moving from the States to Mexico. I was so excited to get rid of everything. And whatever I did, and I just took it to my parents' house. I was like, I'm just going to leave this here in the corner. Don't worry about it. And it's not part of your path or aligned with you, then it won't work out. And better door will open. So I think that's super beautiful. Honestly, yeah, diversity. It's a thing to really appreciate, especially like myself coming from Chicago. It's a melting pot of everybody. So you have all kinds of different friends, coworkers, and I think that's the beauty of it. And it also just makes you appreciate more like the cultures though when you go to these other countries because they really hone in their cultures and they really keep the traditions going. And I think there's a beautiful aspect to that as well.
Yeah, definitely. It was really cool being a part of celebrations that have been there for thousands of years or, sharing in their culture. And they could say, oh, I have this spot in the parade because it's been passed down for generations and it's been in my family. That's such a unique thing as I think my family, I was the first generation of my family to be born in the US. So I don't have that tie. And I think a lot of Americans don't because we're all immigrants at some point. Our family came from somewhere else. We don't have this tie of like thousands of years of history tying us to one location.
That's so true. Beautifully said. So, what was the most surprising thing that you learned about yourself on this journey so far?
The most surprising thing, I really learned to redefine what strength is. I think inherently, especially like growing up, I didn't really see myself as being someone who is very strong. Being from a Latino family, everyone's very loud and maybe explosive when they're angry. And I've always been quite calm and just very passionate or like kind. And I think that going through all of those challenges on my own and navigating all of it on my own and still coming out on top. I remember like telling someone my story and they were, wow, you're like really brave. And I was like, oh, I don't think I would have ever used that word to define myself. But he was like, I would have never done something like that. You just moved to another country. You didn't even know anyone there. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, why would you do that? It didn't occur to me that that would be weird.
My family and your family, they went to a different country or like a long time ago. I had the mindset if my parents can go to another country and not know the language or anyone, felt like I could do the same thing, just a different country. I think from our perspectives, it seemed normal. Would you agree?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think maybe in a way it seemed less scary than what my parents did because they were going from a situation where they were moving truly for a better life, for opportunity, and they had to hustle and grind for it. I'm just going for fun, just because I want to.
Exactly. I totally agree with that. So tell us about teaching English in Spain and how was that journey for you?
I have so much respect for teachers. I think it was the hardest job I ever had. I was so excited to get back to marketing because I was like, oh, this is so much easier than teaching. It's such a rewarding career when you walk into a room and you see kids on the first day and they're afraid to speak English. And by the end of the year, they're telling you all about their weekend. It's like you just made magic happen. That it's such a rewarding thing to be a part of someone's growth in that way. It was also very difficult. You're having to command a whole room, 25 to 30 people who are teenagers and are not interested. And their mind is everywhere else and the hormones and dating. You remember what it was like to be 15? Sometimes you just wake up in a bad mood.
You just don't want to go to school, but your parents made you go to school, and then the secret side of it.
Yeah. Yeah. One day I'd be like, hey, Miguel, what's up? And Miguel was my like bestie. And the next day I'd be like, hey, Miguel. And he'd look at me like, stop talking to me. Like, why are you bothering me? I taught for 3 years, pretty much until COVID happened. And then it became really difficult to keep the job because they pretty much shut down all the schools. Around that time, this isn't really what I want to do long term. All of my career had been in marketing. Remote jobs started abounding everywhere, and I was able to get a remote job in marketing.
That's incredible. I love that. What advice would you give to someone who wants to move abroad but is scared of the unknown or the language or even something simple like as the food? Because I know even food can be a culture shock.
Yeah, for sure. I think the number one advice I would give is know your why. Like, why are you doing this? And really stand on it because depending on where you move, it can be a very challenging process. Maybe the immigration, all the paperwork is very challenging. The aspect of not knowing the language can be challenging. And when you have that why, being like, okay, why did I do this? And you can like lean back on it and be like, okay, that's what I'm doing all of this for. It can really make all of the difference. I also read this quote recently, which I really loved. It's from the book Don't Believe Everything You Think. And I think when a lot of us think about the unknown, there's a lot of fear attached to it, right? Because it's like, oh, I know the challenges I'm facing now, but like, what about the challenges in the unknown? He actually says that the unknown is the only place where the possibility for a better life exists. So I think instead of focusing on the fear of the challenges that are waiting for you and the unknown, try to think about the joy and the possibilities of learning, of experiencing new things, of experiencing new possibilities that can be in the unknown as well.
That's so beautiful. We'll never know if we don't try. I always tell people, they're like, why would you move to another country? Because I want to go try and I want to go experience something new. And if you don't like it, there's always a ticket back home if you don't like it. Then I think that's a really big one. When it comes to building your community, because you essentially didn't know anyone except your friend that you went with, who are both brand new to this city and country. How did you cultivate a community, and what did you do to start building your foundation essentially?
Yeah, I think when I moved to Spain, it was a little easier because I did move with the job. So I was able to meet people through the job and other people who were teaching English. Almost about 3 years ago, I transitioned to Portugal. And when I moved to Portugal, I had no friend that I moved with. I moved completely by myself and I didn't have a job because at that point I had my own social media business. And so it was definitely a lot harder, and building community was even more important because if not, I was completely by myself. So one of the tools that I used the most was Facebook groups, especially ones for women and other like female expats or like who were in the area. And then I would look for people who were talking about things that I was interested in and meet with them for coffee. I also tried going to a lot of meetup events. It didn't really lead to many friendships, but at least in the beginning stages, it helped me get out there and start socializing. The other biggest one that actually really helped was Bumble BFF. I don't know if you've ever used it. But I was able to like meet quite a lot of interesting women from on Bumble BFF, and then two of them became like some of my closest friends in town.
That's amazing. I definitely agree with the Facebook groups because those are super helpful, especially if it's like the ones for women, because then it just makes you feel more comfortable going to events because essentially you're going by yourself. Well, going from Spain to Portugal, what was your mindset on that, and what was your motivation to go to Portugal?
It was a little bit of what I was telling you about earlier, about diversity, actually, because I realized, so I was living in Malaga, Spain, which is a very wonderful city. I recommend visiting it. But I felt like long term, I couldn't see myself there because of the lack of diversity. I noticed there was a lot of traditional mindset, which I felt like I didn't necessarily align with. I was like, okay, I kind of want like a more multicultural, more diverse city. I ended up moving to Lisbon because it's also by the coast. I love being by the water. It was very difficult actually because I did the process all by myself. I needed something like $20,000, which I did not have. So I had to super grind to get the money. It was quite the difficult process, but kind of like what you said, when something's right for you, it just aligns. Because I remember I was trying to stay in Spain and it was just one hurdle after another. And every time I would keep trying to make it work, and the door would just keep shutting. And until finally the final door shut and it was like, this isn't going to be possible for you. And then people started being like, oh, what about Portugal? What about Portugal? It's a very similar climate. It has a lot of the aspects that you like about Spain. They're like, what about Portugal? And I was like, okay. So I had a call with a lawyer and she was like, yeah, you would totally qualify. And when I got here to Lisbon, because I'd been to Portugal but not Lisbon, so I was like, okay, let me go check it out. And on the first day that I arrived, I found my apartment in like my dream neighborhood. The landlord lowered my deposit. He was like, I just like your energy. And then like I ended up meeting my closest friend that same night. And it was my first day in Lisbon. So I was like, I think this is a sign.
That's how you know you made the right choice. You've never been there, but you took that leap of faith. And if things were lining up, it was meant to be. I think that's so beautiful. Fear is just false evidence appearing real, in my opinion. That's all it stands for. 85 to 90% of things that we fear don't even come true. So we should just go do what makes us happy. You see these quotes where it's like, a business owner will never make fun of you for starting a business. Somebody who has what you want, they will never make fun of you for doing those things. And I think it's just finding your people and finding your path, because the people closest to you in your hometown may not understand, but there is a whole world out there of people that will understand and align with your purpose.
Yeah, definitely. And I love what you said about fear because it can really keep us trapped in a spot and freeze us from going after the things that we want. But I think that when, as you said, when the path is right for you, you don't even have to be afraid because the path will show you that it's meant for you. Things will just start aligning in a way that you can't even explain.
I 100% agree. If resilience had a recipe, what three ingredients would you say that are essential to having resilience in any endeavor that you go for?
That's a great question. There's a lot that goes into resilience, and I break down 10 traits in my first episode, but if I had to pick the three most essential ingredients, I would say one of them is optimism and hope. It's so easy when you're going through a hard thing to get into that mindset of like, woe is me, like, why is this happening to me? And a lot of people become hardened and bitter through those experiences. But I think the ability to move through a hard season and still believe that better is out there, that better is coming, it can really help you hold on through the darkest seasons. So that's important. I also think coping skills, being able to take care of yourself, knowing when to reach out to others, how to lean on others for support, and cultivating those communities to take care of yourself is really important. And I think the last one is having a solution-oriented mindset. I always say every obstacle is just an opportunity to test out a new solution. That perspective that you have of when you're meeting a challenge, not seeing it as like a setback or something like sent to punish you, but seeing it as something sent to challenge you to evolve and be a better person, be more of who you're meant to be, can really make or break the experience.
I love all of those three tips. What has helped you stay optimistic throughout this? Not only moving to a new country, but moving to a new country twice and really just building yourself back up in a new country and laying down the foundation.
Two things actually. When I was a little girl, my dad used to always say this word to me. It's a Spanish word. It's ánimo. I shared about it on Threads. I don't know if you saw the post, but ánimo is kind of like your will to persevere, no matter what. And anytime he would see me like down or like sad, he'd always tell me like ánimo, ánimo, like get up, ánimo. And he always would tell me this thing of like, remember that the world or like life can take everything from you, but as long as you have ánimo, you still have everything you need inside of you to get back up. And he would always tell me, like, don't ever let anyone or anything take your ánimo. They can take anything else, but don't let them take your ánimo. And it's that ánimo is kind of like that spark inside of you. I would say, like, from a young age, I feel like my dad really instilled that in me, that will to persevere. And also my faith, my spirituality, knowing that, believing in God, feeling like, okay, everything is happening for a purpose, or even if I can't see the meaning in this, like, I trust that, like, God is guiding me through this and that everything will make sense to me on the other side. I just have to keep showing up and keep putting my best foot forward and get through the storm to see the rainbow on the other side, so to speak.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I'm a firm believer in that. If it works out, it's God's direction. If it doesn't work out, it's His redirection. You're never going to be given anything you can't handle, and it's always going to work out. I have absolutely no dreams or desires to go to medical school because it's not for me. I will tell you, that would not work out. So, but writing and like podcasting and sharing these experiences with other people, it is because it's honestly my passion. I just want to share education and positive mindsets with other people that I wish I had once upon a time. So if it works out, it's direction. If it doesn't, it's redirection.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that there's so much comfort in knowing that, like, everything's going to work out for me. I just need to essentially know how to hear the signs and know how to find the path that is aligned.
Absolutely. Well, before we go ahead and wrap things up, I just want to say thank you for being here and thank you for sharing your story, your journey with us. Where can people find you and where can they support you?
Yeah, definitely. They can check out my Instagram. It's Ambar Paloma. And on my link in bio, they'll be able to find my podcast. You can also search for me on Spotify or Apple, Ambar Paloma, and you should be able to find it as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Amber. I'll have all of your links linked down in the description below so people can stay in touch.
Wonderful. And thank you so much. I had so much fun chatting with you today.
So did I. I know this is going to help a lot of people, and I'm really excited about that. Thank you.
Thank you.